It is my last week of my master's degree. So let me tell you a quick rundown of how we got here. I am so happy. I am so proud of myself. I still have a little bit of work to do. Quick back history. My bachelor's degree is in elementary education, and I went to school for education, obviously, and then worked as a classroom teacher for a few years after. Unfortunately, I teach in the horribly educated and horribly ran state of Oklahoma. And this was the primary reason that I left the classroom. Truly, the politics of the state, the lack of pay. There's just so many things I could go on for years. You could not pay me to be a teacher in Oklahoma again. There are some things that I miss so greatly about working on that level with children. I love children, but I ultimately decided not for me. Not for me. I am too loud. I do not take orders quietly enough, and I am just not a yes man, and that's not going to work very well for most people in Oklahoma schools. So after I graduated with my bachelor's, I was actually offered a scholarship program thing through the university that I had went to, that I had applied for and received, and it was for continued education credit. So if I went back and I received some kind of continued education that would apply to Oklahoma public schools, I would have that part of my tuition paid for, and this was just something that my university offered. So I did do that. Graduated with my bachelor's in education in spring of 2018, and then I actually went back in the fall of 2018. I went ahead and identified myself as a school counseling major, but I was not completely sure that that's what I would stick with or where I would end up, because I was truly, after only my first semester of working in Oklahoma schools, I was truly sitting there thinking, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I can work in a school. I'm not sure that I want to do this. And so that little persistent thought told me, be careful. Don't take too much, because who knows if you actually want to do this. It's really sad, but it's kind of like as soon as I started working in the classroom, I was pretty aware that I would not want to continue working in the classroom. And truly, it had nothing to do with the children. So long story short, the spring of 2019, we relocated to a new area of the state. I was still taking 1 or 2 classes at this time, but continued teaching, moved up to 4th grade as a classroom teacher, taught that whole year. And then, you know what happened in 2020, and I decided that I needed to see how this was going to play out before I was willing to spend any more of my hard-earned money on going to school. Because while yes, I had a scholarship, like that was only going to last for a few semesters, and then whatever extra I was going to have to pay for. During that time, I worked for a horrific principal, and I decided that there is no way in hell that I could stay in Oklahoma education for much longer. I had no clue what I was going to do, but after only a few years in the classroom, I submitted my resignation and I said, sayonara, I cannot be here anymore. I was insanely lucky that the current job that I work for now, which is a nonprofit, I knew the director of, and they were hiring in my area, and she just coincidentally reached out to me a few days after I had resigned and said, would you be interested in a position in our area? And I was like, oh my God, yes. So that allowed me to go into a role where I could work from home. It changed so much about my life. I actually went, as a teacher in Oklahoma, I actually got a pretty significant pay increase going to work for a nonprofit, which is ridiculous, but just tells you how underpaid Oklahoma teachers are. Y'all are doing charity work out there still. So during the pandemic, I actually just took a break from schooling. I waited until we learned what was going to happen with that before I decided if I wanted to go back to my master's degree. So as I said, I left education during that time. This was 2021. I left education spring of 2021, and year ended in May, and I did not go back. and I began working for the nonprofit. So this allowed me the opportunity to stay home with my children, but it really allowed me the opportunity to make a decision as to what I was going to do with my master's degree. I knew that now I was not going back to work in a school in any capacity, as a school counselor, as an educator. Like, it was just not in the cards for me. I did not want to do that. I did not believe in the mission of a lot of Oklahoma schools, and so that was off the table for me. But now I'm many classes in to a master's degree in school counseling. What am I going to do about that? I sat down with the director of the program, and we decided that it would be really good for me to pivot. I went through a terrible time during this time off of grad school. My son died. My daughter was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. I lived a lot of life experience, and ultimately decided that the route that I would end up would be going for my LPC, which is a counselor in Oklahoma, so mental health counselor. That required me to add on an insane amount of stuff that I was not anticipating with going to grad school. But you know what? This is where I should have been. This is where I should have ended up in the first place. I'm so glad that I ended up here. I was meant to be a therapist. In fact, my very first degree, or my very first major in college, was that I wanted to be a therapist, but I was talked out of it by a family member, and I'm glad that I didn't listen, in a sense, because the journey of life kind of thing, but also like kind of sucks that I did listen to them, and now I'm just now finishing my master's degree at 30 years old. But whatever, life is life. I lived it. I'm glad that I lived it, and I'm here. I am at the last week of my master's degree. And after all the time I've put in, all the dedication, the hours of studying, all of those things, I will be pressing submit on my final assignments on Saturday at the latest, because that's when they're due. I will take my final exam on Monday. I just have to have a live proctor during it, and so I can't take that till Monday. After that, all I have left to do, I will pass my school exams. So we do have a 200 question exam that I have to sit and take with the university, and I have to pass that. After I complete that, I go into an interview portion where they will take what my lowest domain, there's 8 domains for LPCs that you have to be really proficient in. And so they will take my lowest domain, and we will go through it in the interview, and basically it will give me an opportunity to prove that I know this information. I just maybe didn't do so well on that domain in the test, and talk about my experience through grad school. Hopefully I pass these. Hopefully everything goes well. But all that stands between me and walking in December with a master's degree in my hand is submitting my assignments this week, which they're done, they're ready. I just need to submit them. I'm waiting on one thing from my supervisor, and then I will submit them, and passing that exam and doing okay in my interviews. I fully believe this is what I meant to do, but that's what stands between me and my master's degree.